Hi, it's Deboki, and today I'm going to be doing my July 2016 wrap-up. So kind of like last month, I do have an overall theme for what I read, or for at least for the books I'm going to talk about today. Originally, I thought this theme was going to be things that are, or books that are outside of my comfort zone, which is definitely still going to be true, but I realized there's a more specific title for all of this, and that's or really not for all of this, but for the books that I'm going to be talking about, and that is collections. These books are collections either of poetry, of short stories, or essays, and usually I tend to read novels. It's just, I think like a lot of people, you just read books all the time, so that's what I got used to. I thought for this month it would be nice to try something a little bit different and read things that are a little bit shorter or have different, kind of a different prose style that I'm usually reading. I did read some things this month that did not fall into this category. So The Making of Asian America was a nonfiction history book. I made a review of this. I thought it was amazing. I think everyone should read it. I also read Alyssa Cole's Radio Silence series, which is a romance series about basically this world where, well, our world, but where basically all of the electricity goes out, and it's a really cool mix of sci-fi and romance. It also features a lot of diversity. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a short story collection, and this is Vampires in the Lemon Grove by Karen Russell, and the stories in this collection are kind of all set in maybe familiar worlds, but have a supernatural bent to them, like, say, vampires who live in a lemon grove. So I don't like really read short stories that often. I think a big reason is because I really like reading stories for plot. I'm not very good at ambiguous endings or really any kind of ambiguity in general. And so definitely with this collection of short stories, I noticed that the stories where I felt most frustrated were the ones where the ending was a little bit more open-ended. So if that's something that you really enjoy, I think that will definitely, this book is not going to be a problem for you at all. If you have a few issues with that, I still really enjoyed this book. Some stories I like more than others. So my favorite story maybe had kind of the least plot element to it, so which kind of contradicts my earlier statement. It's called Dugbert Shackleton's Rules for Antarctic Tailgating, and it's basically this very bizarre story about this, basically told from the perspective of this guy who's watching what's called the food chain games, which is basically different creatures from different parts of the food chain competing against each other. In his case, he's really rooting for Team Krill to defeat Team Whale, which after, millennia of evolution is still unlikely to happen, but, like any good sports fan, he's really rooting for his team. So it's written in that same style of like a really, really excited but perpetually disappointed sports fan. So Reeling for the Empire, that's the one about the Japanese girls who are turning into silkworms. That's kind of had more of the elements of a horror story, and I really enjoyed it. So next up is a series of essays, and this is Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem. I don't think I've read any Joan Didion before. Her writing style is very, very distinct to me. I mean, she writes these very long paragraphs, very long sentences. It was the kind of writing that when you finish, I think it's so distinctive that at least for me, I felt like I was still thinking in her tone. And when someone writes so well, at least for me, I just kept wanting to read more and more. Even when she was writing about very tough subjects like drug addiction, you can tell kind of how much work she's put into understanding the people that she's talking to, as well as conveying them to an audience. One of my favorites of these essays was the Los Angeles Notebook essay. I lived in LA or near LA for some time. I grew up in SoCal for a while, and she talks at length about the Santa Ana wind, but reading her description, it really brought me back there, and I really enjoyed the essay. Next up is going to be poetry, and I kind of have a bit of a stack of these, so yeah, I guess we can start going through them. I don't really read that much poetry. Again, I feel like I've been saying that for everything so far. But I mean, even more than short stories, I think poetry trades in a lot of ambiguity and a lot of figurative language that I understand the value of, but that I'm not necessarily very good at. Like, I like things that are a little bit more direct. I like thinking about my writing, but I don't like trying to decipher it, I guess. But yeah, for the sake of kind of going out of my comfort zone, I decided I wanted to read a little bit more poetry. And to start off with, I actually started reading Ariel by Sylvia Plath. So this is a collection of her poetry. So this is the restored edition that I think was put back in the order that she'd originally wanted her poetry to be published in. The foreword is written by her daughter, and I really enjoyed reading this. I think it personalized Sylvia Plath in a way that a lot of times when we talk about maybe artists in general, and maybe especially artists who lead tragic lives or have tragic ends to their lives, maybe not tragic lives, I think we sometimes lose out on. I don't know that I could say much about her poetry. It's I don't know that I understand everything, but I really I'm glad I read it, and I think I will reread it. I will probably reread it many times. Her style, yeah, she writes really good poetry. The images are very vivid, so even if I don't completely understand what it is she's like trying to get me to know, or even if she's trying to get me to like know anything at all, I really enjoyed reading it. So the next two books I'm going to talk about are by, or next two poetry collections I'm going to talk about are by the same poet. They are Love and Misadventures, wrong way camera, and by Leav, and then Lullabies, also by Leav. I liked a lot of the poems. I did not like these as a collection because she has a lot of poems that are about the same ideas. They're very much about heartbreak and loving people, and that's fine, but she repeats a lot of the same imagery, so I kind of felt like I was reading the same idea over, but just with different sentences. And the poems that stood out to me the most were the ones that broke that habit. I just found I found it very repetitive to read all at once. I think maybe this would have worked better if I was reading it like every few days, just like a handful of poems when I went to bed. But it's the kind of thing where I would like one or two of these poems like printed out or something, but as a collection it just wasn't ideal. Next up is Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. Brown Girl Dreaming is an autobiographical collection of poetry but it is very much following the story of Jacqueline Woodson's life, kind of in the various places that she lived with different family members. And yeah, I thought the choice of poetry was really interesting because she's basically recalling images from her childhood. Poetry actually totally makes sense as a way to convey that, because when you think back on your childhood, it's not like you have full stories remembered most of the time, right? Like you might have one or two stories that like you know the full like 5-paragraph essay version of them, but most things from your childhood are really, they're collections of images. Like it might be like a house that you lived in, or like a pair of shoes that you really liked, and that's kind of what this book felt like. If she was born in the 60s, so there's a lot about the racism and segregation that was going on in different places that she lived. This book won a Newbery Honor Award. It's clearly more geared towards children, so I think it would be really great to share with kids that you know as well. I think it'll be a different type of book than what they might be used to. I highly recommend it. So the next book is Citizen: An American Lyric by Claudia Rankin. She's basically writing poems and I guess essays / poems that are about different aspects of racism against Black people. So one of the ones that struck me a lot was she has this long kind of pseudo or basically essay about Serena Williams and all the racism that she's experienced in the tennis world and from like the tennis audience. This is one of those books like kind of like Ariel, but maybe even more so that I don't have a way to commentate on it. Like this is not my personal experience, and I think structurally like what she's doing is it's very, very good. I just don't have the vocabulary to really do it justice. I just think that I'm really glad that I read this book. I think anytime you have an opportunity to learn kind of about someone else's experiences, whether it's like Brown Girl Dreaming or Citizen, I think you should take it. And I think one of the things that I'm realizing kind of as I talk about this is that maybe that's something that poetry is so great for, because it's so image-based that you really get snapshots of other people's lives that you might not be able to get as easily in other forms. Yeah, I think that applies for my last book actually, which is Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth by Warsan Shire, who I think I like had kind of known about her, but like a lot of people, I knew learned about her more via Lemonade, Beyonce's album. But like, yeah, like those poems that I'm mentioning before, I mean, these are so much about the images, and I think I'm really starting to realize the value of poetry in that way. They're kind of like a selfie, but like with words. Sorry, that's like, I feel like that doesn't even do them justice. But yeah, they're just and these poems are not always autobiographical. Like Warsan Shire, she says like it's clear that her poems that she's writing, they're not all about her, but they feel autobiographical in some way, where even if they're not about her like specific life, they are about her and what she feels is important to be talking about and the way that she wants to talk about them. Even like the collection that I didn't like Laying Leaves collection of poems, but there's clearly something so personal about them, same with Ariel. And yeah, I guess seems like the kind of thing that maybe if I took an English class on poetry right now, like would be a very obvious lesson that like there would be a really clear lecture about it, and I would have a better understanding of how like why poetry is so clearly great for personal narrative. I guess I never really thought about it till like just now. I was thinking about some similar ideas before, because I think one of the things that struck me is that Ariel is very much full of figurative language. Like, I don't completely understand what she's talking about. There's clearly a way to kind of politicize them and make them about women and the way that women are treated, but they are still more abstract and they feel a lot more personal than that. I think like Brown Girl Dreaming and Warsan Shire's book and Claudia Rankine's book, they are personal, but they are also very, very, very easy to politicize. They are very much about a specific experience that maybe kind of against the backdrop of what's going on now and what's gone on in the 60s. You know, there's a lot of aspects of different experiences, whether they're in a different country or they are in the US, that there's like there is a way to politicize their lives. And maybe there's something there about me projecting that onto it, or like similar audiences wanting to project that onto their poems. But I mean, especially like Citizen, I don't think there's a way you can think of that book as not political. And the language in it is very, very clear. Like, there's not like a level abstraction away from the racism that's going on, the way that, like, I don't know, some of the things that in Ariel might feel like a female experience further abstracted away. Same with Brown Girl Dreaming. I mean, Brown Girl Dreaming, she's very much collecting images and telling the story of her childhood, but those images are really important because they're very much about the racism as well as the family experience of, like, as well as the family experience. I don't even know how to talk about it. Ugh. Yeah. Anyway, I think what I was wondering is, when we talk about our personal experience, can we abstract away from them more, or is that what we're going for? Is that like a goal? Whereas when we're talking about things that are more political, even if they are personal, do we have to be more concrete? Is that a requirement of poetry that's more politicized or more clearly a protest? Because in some ways it seems necessary. If you are trying to address a specific topic, it's important to be, I guess, direct about it, but is there a way to talk more abstractly about these topics, or do we not want to? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really being coherent. I think my point is that I like poetry and I should read more of it and I want to learn more about it. And yeah, I really appreciate that. I feel like I got to learn about a lot of different experiences just by reading these poetry collections. Anyway, did anything you read this last month cause you to have a crisis about, I don't know, the purpose of poetry and what it serves, and make you wish that you'd taken more poetry classes in college? Because if so, you can talk to me. Yeah, anyway, so let me know if you have poetry to recommend to me, please let me know. I think it's clear that I want to read more of it. I will be reading Milk and Honey whenever it gets into the library. I'm looking for more poetry, more poets. Yeah, anything. Yeah, bye.